So we're dedicating the learning today to the Ilui Neshama of the soldiers who died on Kiddush Hashem and fighting for our great zchut to be able to live here as individuals, as a people. And it's quite hashgacha that we're in the Netivot of Avas Hashem, because the second chapter of Netivot Avas Hashem actually explores the nature of Kiddush Hashem and its relationship with love of God. And the truth is, we already know that there's this relationship because the very first Ma'amar of the Maharal in exploring the nature of Avas Hashem was the story of Rabbi Akiva, and even though it was the pasuk of Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, that he said that his whole life was really a yearning to fulfill his act. How would we describe that? Was that an act of Kiddush Hashem? Was it an act of Ahavas Hashem? Are those both the same thing? Are those two different realities? So the Maharal actually explores this in the second parak of Netivot Avas Hashem. So even though there's many more riches in the first one, in the first paragraph, in the first chapter, we'll skip to the second one and decide in the future whether to go back and fill in or how. So we'll learn today the teachings of the Maharal around this, and see what opens up for us in that. But first, just in terms of looking at what happened with Rabbi Akiva, as we looked at so much in detail, he was talking from the reality of love, and Chazal actually described Ve'ahavtat Hashem Elokecha Chol Vavcha V'chol Nafshecha V'chol Yodecha, as we know that it's with Shnei Yitzrecha, and it's with B'chol Nafshecha Afilu Afilu notelet nafshecha, afilu notelet chayecha. Even though he's taking away your life, the intensity of the love of God needs to be so strong and so absolute that even if it's going to cost one's life, nevertheless one willingly forfeits, which l'chor is what Kiddush Hashem is, and that though it has various elements to the definition of it, Kiddush Hashem, nevertheless it's describing that, and yet we don't find when the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvos defines Kiddush Hashem and the Mishnah Torah defines Kiddush Hashem, he does not bring that pasuk. Right? The pasuk he brings is V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, the pasuk that we had in the parsha. Right? V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. That is some very profound expression of what it means to make God kadosh, which itself is a bit of an anomaly, to make God kadosh. And when we declare him to be kadosh, and in fact some of the Rishonim learn that v'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael is actually fulfilled when we say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh in the Kedusha. The Rosh brings this as one of the explanations for why Rabbi Elazar was able to be meshachrer, able to free his eved, even though it was a certain level of an aveira to be meshachrer his eved, because there's a mitzvah asay doraisa v'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, which can only be miskayim when there's a minyan, when there's toch b'nei Yisrael, when then he would be freed, and then it would be kiddush shem shamayim barabi, which you wouldn't be able to do it at all if it wasn't that you had the minyan, right? So I mean, that's v'nikdashti. I mean, all we're doing is we're saying it, we're just saying it. I mean, we're describing the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. We're not actually doing something to him, right? So nevertheless, right, v'nikdashti, which is this nif'al, it's something that happens to me by virtue of certain things that you do. So that is a reality which is defined by the nature of our behavior, even sometimes just the nature of our declaration, right, of it being so, which is itself is going to need some exploration, but nevertheless, as it is, still in terms of the mitzvah as it's described in the Chachamim, by the Chachamim, it's a different mitzvah, v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, and therefore Rabbi Akiva's focus on that as being what he was doing, it wasn't like nitzta'arti kol yimei chayai, on this pasuk v'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael matay yavo liyadi. That wasn't the one that he was waiting for happening. He was waiting for the one of Ahavas Hashem, and yet, we're used to that being the symbol of Kiddush Hashem, Rabbi Akiva, there. So, and he's not talking that. He's not saying that, right? So there's something going on there, right, which we want to explore a bit. The relationship between these two, and quite, as I say, well, I'm excited about it. That the Maharal actually explores this, and this is where we are, in the Netiv, the relationship between these two, and that's in the second parak when he is actually machalik between them, right? So we'll take a look at that in terms of, first just in terms of the lumdus of it, and then in terms of the pnimius of it, and then in terms of the way that relates back to what was happening with Rabbi Akiva, and finally with how that relates to our soldiers who died in protecting our ability to be here and enabling us to be here. So look, כשם שמצווה על האדם לאהוב השם יתברך, כך מצווה עליו שיהיה גורם שיהיה שם שמיים מתאהב על ידו. So the first thing that the Maharal is bridging here is the transition from something which is really a very personal relationship that I'm having with God as a lover to one who is arousing love in others by virtue of the nature of my relationship with God. So that is actually included, as he's about to explain it, in the mitzvah of Avas Hashem. Now, before we go on, I'll just point out that the Rambam actually says this in Mitzvah Gimel of the Sefer HaMitzvos when he describes the mitzvah of Avas Hashem, a very, very, very yesodistic Rambam in terms of Avodas Hashem, where probably even best to read it inside. Yeah. Oh, great. So in the mitzvos aseh, mitzvah gimel, shetzivanu la'ahavo yitala, v'zeh shenitbonein v'naskil mitzvotav u'pu'ulotav. And this comes by virtue of our contemplating his mitzvot, the hanhagot which he revealed to us, u'pu'ulotav, and his ways, which he spells out in greater detail in Yesodei Torah and in the Mar Nevuchim about learning to look at the creation in a way that arouses you to love God, which takes a lot of work. He says in the Morah, especially, he says it takes a lot of work, and that's why so few people are going to ever really appreciate what I'm trying to teach them. He says, and as a matter of fact, he writes at the beginning of the Sefer, I've actually got one Talmud who I'm writing this for, who, out of all of them, seemed to really understand what I was talking about. It's really poignant moment in reading the Morah. Is this like, it's you, I can't even pronounce his name, some Arabic name. It's you that I'm writing this for, because you will know what I mean. But everyone else is so impatient, and they're unwilling to go through all of the tedious steps of preparing their minds and preparing their reasoning and expanding their knowledge and coming to understand and investigating and knowing that, they so much want. He explains later on in Lamed Daled, in the first Chelik, there's so much want just to get to the end. They have no idea that really it's an illusion that there's going to be an end. There's never going to be an end. There's just going to be a yearning and an exploring and a coming to know. And in the dedicating one's life to coming to know, so then one is in the dedication of love. And so he says this mamish, like so much beremez here, just naskil v'nitbonein mitzvotav u'pu'ulotav. The pu'ulotav is the world, and we'll talk more of that later. Ad shenasigeu v'nitaneg b'hasagato tachlit ha'ta'anug, which we explored at much length in past shiurim. I think especially in the spiritual foundations for relationship shiurim, that the root of love is pleasure, and one needs to be able to allow oneself to experience pleasure, which is not always such a psychologically speaking, not always such an easy thing for people. Yeah, especially in a sanctified context, but even in a not sanctified context. Just having this with my therapists group of women, like writing stuff in Hebrew and they read it in English. And like, so it was about, Hannah and Tova and, Avram Avinu and like, and this is where we're like 5 months into learning together. And one of the women um, bursts out crying. And then she just like lets it out. It's like, I've been listening to you for 5 months and it's been building up in me that I never allow myself to take any pleasure in anything. That it's a forbidden realm for me to have pleasure. She's a woman who deals with wayward youth. She's like the head of some dropout youth, and she just cannot allow herself to feel pleasure. And part of what happens in the dynamic with the kids is, I think she kind of feeds it, like, look what happens when what you get into is pleasure. She kind of feeds her own complex, in the work she does. And she's just starting to break out of it. She said, like, hearing this Torah has like completely exposed to her the depths of her block. I mean, this is not a simple thing. The Rambam's saying, like, likbonein, achenit aneg tachlita ta'anu. You have to be willing to allow yourself to go there, and to go there by virtue of this kind of a contemplation. And this is very important, right? Because it's a very personal and relational contemplation. You're contemplating what God is saying through the mitzvot, and you're contemplating what God is doing and ultimately saying through his actions of the world, including the table in front of you and the glass that's, that you're drinking from. It's all that deep. It's all that deep. And to access that kind of an oneg is a precondition for being able to have love. You can't love if you can't experience oneg. That's a yesod in the Rambam, because love, as we've been seeing in the Maharal, although he never spoke to us about it in the context of oneg, but I think they share this, that love is the union with the wholeness of reality in its realness. And so, like he described to us, a person's yearning and love of God to be in union with reality at its deepest, which is God, the ultimate emet, the ultimate truth. So for the Rambam too, as he says at the end of Hilchos Tshuva, it's impossible to separate truth and love, because love is a joining with the truth of what is. Otherwise, you're not joined with anything except your own self. And profoundly, the emotive or sensate experience of that joinder with what is pleasure. It's oneg. It's when life is most intense, and so there's a sensation that accompanies life when it's most intense and connected. They always come together, and that's this oneg. So the oneg arrives, and then as a result of the oneg comes the ahava, which is the experience of the union. So first is the contemplation, just the truth, knowing the truth, desiring it, being at one with it in a way in which you are completely resonant with it, and then you're in it, and it's just this high pleasure, and then the highest pleasure, and then the opening of the emotion. The oneg is more not really an emotion; it's a sensation. And then the opening of the emotion as a result of that process, which is first mental, then sensate, and then finally emotive, is love. And that love is the emotive expression of the union, whether it be that there's a yearning for the union or an actual involvement in the union. but it's related to that. This is what really we've been seeing in the Maharal, in the kind of language that he uses about why it's the ultimate love, which is going to always be the love of God. It might come through loving a human being, right? But it's going to be ultimately about ultimate reality. So I'm just giving this as background, really, to like the chilukim. But go ahead, Eitanya.
So what am I supposed to do when I don't know? I skip out on Davening Mari so I can eat some Ben and Jerry's, which I really love.
No, clear. No, man, we'll talk about this later. I think we might have missed something. I'm not talking about the pleasure of eating Ben and Jerry's. I'm talking about the pleasure which comes from a deep relating to truth and to understanding. Yeah, I mean, the Baal Shem Tov says, right, and the Shla actually brings this in his discussions about Avas Hashem, which are amazing, and the Shnei Luchos Habris. It's worth seeing in the Shar Shlishi and Revi as a very long excursus on Avas Hashem, and he talks about B'chol Levavcha as involving the Yetzer Hara in the reality of love. Okay, but I don't want to go off onto that right now, because that's really not the oneg he's talking about. Okay.
I just want to put in one word which you said and see if it's the be all and end all. You said love is an emotive expression. Love is an emotive expression, a true statement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't understand how we use it.
Yeah. It's fed by a very the very vast consciousness of one and understanding, etc. But yeah, I don't think we.
Well, I heard the process.
Okay. Yes, definitely. Okay. Yeah. V'zoti ahava hamechuyevet. Zoti ahava mechuyevet. What is zoti ahava mechuyevet? That which results from the nitbonen v'naskir mitzvotav v'pulotav ad shenesigeh v'nitad gei b'hasaga b'tachlit hatanug. V'zoti ha'ahava hamechuyevet. Now, in the Rambam, of course, we're being given the guide to getting there, right? And it is circular, because love then leads to seeking greater understanding, and greater understanding leads to greater love. What's happening? You switch channels to see what the other guys say?
I don't know what's going.
Kidding. Okay. What is it going?
I'll check it out.
Oh, okay, fine, whatever. Who cares? Lashon Sifri, and the Sifri says, since it says "Ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha," and yodea keitzad ohev et hamakom, Talmud lomar v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha, etc. Okay. שמתוך כך אתה מכיר את מי שאמר והיה העולם. אוקיי. והנה כבר ביארו לך, כי בהסתכלות תתעמת לך ההשגה, יגיע תענוג ותבוא האהבה בהכרח. Right, Rav Aaron, I just want you to hear that the ahava is not the actual histaklut. It comes by virtue of the process. Okay. Then what now we're bringing towards where we want to be, and that is that וכבר אמרו שמצווה זו כוללת גם כן שנדרוש ונקרא אנשים לעבודתו יתעלה ולהאמין בו. That this mitzvah, the Chachamim tell us, also includes inviting others in, which is quite fascinating. In other words, love is not only a result of a very expanded consciousness and awareness of my interconnectedness, or my connection to and my desire to know the true and deepest living reality, but that also implies a responsibility and an involvement with other creatures of awareness, that they also share this. So that that comes out. In other words, you see this very, very beautiful. In other words, it's that expanded consciousness itself, which then leads you to desire that others share that.
Inclusive behavior.
it's an inclusive behavior. By its nature, it's an inclusive behavior. It's like you become, and we know this, like when you're in love, everyone is like, just want to share that.
I'm thinking about a particular experience I was speaking to someone about their parents who they felt had a very unhealthy love. And her description of it was that it was exclusive, that her father was emotionally abusive to everyone else in the family, but had put their mother on like this pedestal where she was this sort of perfect being that he worshipped. And so I see how there's a sort of a corrupt, almost diseased form of love, and perhaps the indicator is whether it's exclusive or inclusive.
Right.
Like, does one's love cause them to reject everyone but the object of love, or is there one love, the characterization that you're saying, which is that it just makes you more loving toward everyone?
Beautiful. I think the deepest reading in the meantime in the bracha of Sameach Tesamach Re'im Ahuvim, which we must have explored in the past. I don't remember, but Sameach Tesamach Re'im Ahuvim, which the Mefarshim have a lot of trouble understanding what it's talking about. So make happy the Re'im Ahuvim, these beloved Re'im, or the beloved Re'im should make are making the couple happy. What is this? So some have like the Shushvinim. We're actually talking about the Shushvinim. We're telling you, Shushvinim, do your job. Best man, do your job and make them happy, etc. But I think in the light of Chazal, you really see it. Mamish glows. What's happening there? What the pasuk is, what the bracha is saying. It's a nusach of Chazal, right? So it's very meduyak. What the bracha is saying is that experience that actually people at a chuppah have. They're describing an experience that we all know, and the experience that we all know at the chuppah is that the love of the couple for each other creates this bizarre phenomenon. It's a psychologically bizarre phenomenon where people become aroused to love. It's like, I say it's a bizarre phenomenon because you would think like the more they look in love with each other, the more either jealous people would become, or turned off they would become, or embarrassed by the scene they would become, or I wouldn't go that far, but you would. Okay, all right. In any case, but there they are. It's like the most amazing thing. There they are under the chuppah, and actually, the more individual they are about it, the more personal they are about it, the more real and universal it becomes, the more everyone becomes participant in it. As soon as either of them break the love lock, the spell, the intimacy of it, as soon as he looks up, right, or she fortunately is usually protected by the veil, not to do that. But if he looks up, and later I'm not going to go into my view of because there's more of a social feminine tendency. So might be one other level in understanding what's going on with the veil. But in any case, so if he looks up and he starts that to his friends out there, it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? Now isn't he now inviting everyone in? No, he's not inviting anyone into anything, because what was there is no longer. Because the more intense the love they're experiencing, the more everyone else experiences the love that is there, because it is a shared phenomenon by its nature. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And that's what we mean when we say Re'im Ahuvim. Everyone is loving them. Everyone is loving them. Everyone who's there is loving them. And that, so beautifully as you're indicating in the story you just told, that itself on a certain level is a reflection of the healthfulness of the relationship. If there's some fear element there that others shouldn't know, or other kind of a possessive thing that or that only don't let anyone else in, or etc. That will actually indicate an unhealthiness that's hovering in here. So the nature of love itself has this expansive, inclusive nature. The Maharal taught us already this. I mean, Rabbi Akiva taught us this, because after he told us the Ahavta was the pasuk he was waiting for, he didn't die declaring the Ahavta. He died declaring Echad. Wait, I thought the pasuk you were waiting to happen for you was the Ahavta. That was the pasuk you said you wanted to be Makayim. So declare that. To declare that wouldn't be declaring what's actually at the root of what's happening here, because the root of what's happening here is the Echad. And we will see why that is so powerfully also a transition teaching from the Ahavas Hashem into the Kiddush Hashem, as we'll discover as we move, because it has to do with that. Okay, but that's like just so. The Rambam tells us that the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem involves us in calling others to this, and he says it's not like it's very, very interesting, and it's something different that we're going to see that the Maharal does. It's not that I have a raya to this, except from experience, because he says v'zeki Kishetohav Adam tasim libcha alav v'tishabchehu u'tivakesh anashim lehov oto. When you love someone, you're like, you just want other people to love that person that you love. And it's not, it can be obviously, compulsively driven, that like, out of an insecurity that, right? I mean, isn't he the greatest? You have those people, who are not sure if they married the right person. I mean, isn't she the greatest? Isn't my wife the greatest? That's like coarse. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this genuine kind of a sharing that like, this is just so marvelous. And there's an assumption that everyone else is also going to be able to appreciate it. And it's true.
There's also a sense of abundance in it, I hear. Like there's a sense how that true love gives you a sense of abundance and boundlessness. So therefore, I couldn't possibly hold all this. So there needs to be outlets.
Beautiful.
And so much of it seems, just in line with what you're saying, is to love someone and to love in that way, to really want people to see how beautiful that person, how wonderful that person is to really love from a place of generosity and not for my own sake.
Right.
I'm loving you so that you'll fulfill my needs, right? Then it comes from that place of real clinging and security, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really flowing because I genuinely am.
A genuine and embracing a unity. And as soon as you're genuinely embracing a unity, so it is by its definition inclusive.
Right, that's true, because the more participants in it, the more real the unity is.
Exactly, because what we're talking about is something which we're both participating in. It's not just ours. We're both participating in a higher unity. That's what the Maharal said at the beginning. He said, ultimately, it's always going to be rooted in the love of God, the love of another human being. Because ultimately, it's going to be rooted in the Echad, as the universal expansiveness, not just as a interpersonal connection between the two of us. Right? So of course, you're going to find yourself, driven to share it. You're going to want to share it, right? You're going to want to share it. Do you think that fan is actually making it cooler in here? I mean, like, is maybe it's a psychological thing? It makes people feel cooler. Which I'm willing to respect, but if it's
probably cooler.
But if it's not actually making people cooler, then farvos.
Yoshua's got it.
Well, I have this in my shul, but I don't know, this like this fan.
Yeah, but psychologically, when you turn it off, I promise you there are 3 or 4 people.
We're going to feel. It's pointing that way. Anyhow, but it's actually it's fascinating in the Rambam, because he doesn't bring a pasuk to prove this. He says, it's just the way it is. Well, zeh hatzad hamashal. כן כשתאהב האל באמת, כמה שהגיע לך מהשגת אמיתתו, it always goes together, הנה אתה בלא ספק, תדרוש ותקרא השכלים לידיעת, with a samech, right, the fools, לידיעת האמת, אשר ידעת אותה אתה, right? That's the Lashon HaSifri ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, אהבהו על הבריות, כאברהם אביך. Right? כאברהם אביך. Okay. So there's this element of seeking to share it. So, but he doesn't. Lichor, he's not darshaning from the pasuk. You could say ahaveu. He's like ve'ahavta. He's learning it as something of a hif'il. I don't think so. I think he really is just telling us this is just the way it is. It's there. It's been there for 1,000 years.
What's the
What?
It's Rambam Sefer Mitzvot, Mitzvot Aseh Gimel.
Okay, so the Maharal takes a somewhat different tack in terms of the pasuk, and where he takes it with the terms of the pasuk is going to then form for him the definitional delineation between the ahava and the kiddush Hashem. So he brings the Gemara from Perek Yom Kippurim, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, שיהי השם שמיים מתאהב על ידך. Right? The Rambam was quoting a Medrash halacha. Maharal's quoting a Gemara, both saying similar things. Though, as we'll see, the Rambam is talking about an expanding of awareness, and the Maharal is going to bring us a description in Chazal which is built on the way people behave. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך, שיהיה שם שמיים מתאהב על ידך. שיהיה האדם קורא ושונה ומשמש תלמידי חכמים. Like a person should grow in his learning, and the way the Maharal at least learns it, you don't have to learn it this way, but the Maharal learns it that we're talking about someone who's actually progressed into becoming a Talmid Chacham himself. He learns first Mikra, then Mishnah, then he's Meshamish Talmid Chacham, and then he himself arrives at that level. You don't have to learn it, quite that way that we're talking about someone who's become a Talmid Chacham, but for reasons which I think are probably beyond the shir for now, the Maharal takes it there. In any case, the diburo benachat im abriot, Mekho matano b'shuk na'eh. The Rambam brings all these things in Yesodei Torah and Perek Hey about Kiddush Hashem. V'nosei v'notein, although he brings it in the context of Kiddush Hashem when a Talmid Chacham does it. So, in that sense, it's very possible that the Maharal and the Rambam are both learning it as being about a Talmid Chacham. But nevertheless, I don't want to. Now I'm going to leave the Rambam and just be in the Maharal. The Maharal learns this having to do with Ahavas Hashem. Okay, but diburo benachat im abriot, he speaks comfortingly, kindly with the briot. Umekho matano bashuk noe, he has an aesthetic sense about how he does his business. It's nae. It's he does things appropriately. I'm sorry.
worthy?
Okay, worthy. V'nosei v'notein be'emuna. He's honest and faithful in his business dealings. Mahabriot omrim alav ashrei ploni shelamad Torah, ashrei aviv shelimdo Torah. How happy, how certain can be the person who taught him Torah, certain that he's been living right, doing right. How certain can his father be who taught him Torah? Hashrei rabo shelimdo Torah. Oy lahem livnei adam shelo lamdu Torah. Yitem ploni shelama Torah kama yafim drachav. See how amazing he is. See how beautiful his ways are. Kama metukin ma'asav alav kasuv omer vayomer li avdi ata Yisrael asher b'chayit payir. This is what God was referring to when he says, Yisrael, you're my servant. I am glorified by you. Okay. We'll keep going. V'zman sheha'adam koreh v'shoneh, right? But I mean, everyone was, of course, this week. Well, actually, there's different minhagim about when you started the Pirkei Avos. But in the minhag that I'm in, so we were in the second parak this week. The derech asher yavo bo ha'adam, kol shi tiferet lo said, tiferet lo min ha'adam, tiferet asher b'chayit payir. There's a glory and a revelation of value that's happening through this. Okay, we won't go beyond that right now. ובזמן שהאדם קורא ושונה ואין דיבורו בנחת עם הבריות ואין מתנו מקחו נאה בשוק ואין אונוסה ונותן ואמונם הבריות אומרים עליו אוי לו לפלוני שלמד תורה אוי לו לאביו שלימדו תורה אוי לו לרבו שלימדו תורה אשרי בני אדם שלא למדו תורה פלוני שלמד תורה כמה מכוערים מעשיו. See how it's like this aesthetic sense and how that connects to the tiferet aspect of it. כמה מקולקלים דרכיו עליו הכסוף אומר ואמור להם עם אדוני אלה ומארצו יצאו. That's the psukim in Yechezkel that chilulu et Hashem in what? In this. That's certainly the implication of Yechezkel, but the implication of the medrash here, which is, I mean, it's would you just conceptualize it, you see right away we're talking about derech eretz. So as soon as you are devoid of derech eretz, so you're devoid of your eretz. They come together because these are beautiful. These behaviors are beautiful to us, not because they're good manners and they are wise ways to conduct ourselves in social conduct so things don't fall apart. No, this is the nature of what it means to be in an ecology of life. It's totally this, right? And so it's beautiful because people are actually conducting themselves in a way which is consonant with the ecology of life, with the balance of the different elements, and they're treating each other in a way which is beautiful. It's not even with respect or with honor or any of the other stuff. Those are other gedarim. Together here is emuna. Together here is nachat. Together here is noeh, tiferet, right? All these elements which are basically you're living in the world in the way the world is. In terms of exactly, beautiful. That's exactly it, right. The harmonious power of our here being here with each other, right? You hear that, but as soon as you lose that, so then me'aratzo yatzau, they're out of the land, and you see how much it's been really a retraining of the Jewish people in returning to the land, of returning to a sense of the simple concern for the environment, right?
We're in process. We're in process.
Okay, we're in process. Yeah, we're in process. I have my claims about our return to the land and how it impacts, what happens in world culture. I think I gave you my Torah already about the Maharishi and the Beatles.
No, that one needs to be repeated.
And that's an obvious one.
Okay. You can treat it just like
67. Yeah, 67. Okay, 67. Sure. When we came back to Yerushalayim and we re-inherited the center of the planet, so then that center of the planet was able to recreate a balance which was crucial between East and West, and opened up the gates to this interpenetration between East and West. That's what happened. So the next year, they're the Beatles. They're learning, how to meditate over there in India, coming back with their new garb and new sounds, and there's this influx of a popularization of Eastern wisdom into the West. It opened the gates. That's all. That's what we do. We're always opening these gates. And as I've explained in the past, it's basically, the planet has a right brain and a left brain. The left brain is Europe and the West, which, when you face north is the left side. And the right brain is India and the East, and all the appropriate functions
Brain
of that, right, brain activities. And here we are in the Middle East. We're in Eretz Israel, right in the middle. Mamish, right in the middle.
A big headache right
Yeah.
now.
Huh? Well, and that, okay, fine. What? That was too quick for me. But I know, it was too quick for me. Tarte mashma. So, but that like binding of the two sides of the brain happened when we retook our place in that center. So that's okay. That I thought that was like old hat, but now, but well, oh boy, does it ever! I mean, this is an awakening for new levels and a calling for new levels of experience of Torah, of exploration of Torah. Mi he'ir mi mizrach, who was aroused out of the east. The Zohar says, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. The Zohar says that's Avraham, da Avraham. Why? Because he came from the east? You know, is this just a geographical thing? No, he came out of the east. He came here to open up a pathway of an interpenetration between these powers, and on a very deep level, in returning to Eretz Yisrael, we're fulfilling what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Avraham is going to be happening at the end. It's all really about Avraham. It really is all about Avraham. It's all about Avraham. Don't ever forget that. It's all about Avraham. And in his coming out of the east, Avraham's coming from the east, Me'ir Mimizrach, Da Avraham, the Zohar says. So he brought it here, and then boom, we're going over there into Europe and all of that kind of a development, and in coming back, we're coming back to this power of unification, and the implications for Torah are magnificent, you know, in terms of other strata of Torah which have not been explored because of the place that we were sent to develop. And we did a darn good job of developing it, like the Rambam says at the end of Hilchos Malachim. We gave them Christianity, we gave them Islam, we moved those pagans closer to, you know, where they need to be. And now we can come back, you know, and we have more tasks to do. Anyhow, so that was 67. That's a long time ago. But okay. But what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's also very interesting to follow and watch, like, the relationship between this new consciousness, environmental, and exactly when does humanity start waking up to that, and what was going on here?
Similar time.
Yeah, it's a similar time. That whole environmental kind of consciousness and concern, et cetera, is also around that same time, because they actually come together. Because as you awaken unity consciousness, so the implications for the environment become very clear. Wait a minute, this is all interconnected. Let's talk about ecology. Let's talk about how that it's around that same time. That's
why the space program and even just the photographs
that was it. That
was a tremendous shift.
Incredible. All of a sudden, people are looking at
the blue-green orb
that we're all sharing.
And nothingness. Don't miss the background there. It has quite an impact. Okay,
so okay, gee, that was just a tangent, but the I mean, the implications of this, right? So ahava is by its nature something which is related deeply to the ecology of the environment, of the society, and that is deeply related to being in your land. Because when you're in Galus somewhere, so you're really not interacting with the earth in the same way when you have returned to be the indigenous population of the land that you're living on, you know, or the native population, which still is around. So So that's like, when you come back to your native land, so like this like awakens all kinds of things. And when you're the Jewish people, so it awakens it all over the planet. It's like, okay, but let's not overdo that.
That's for tomorrow.
That's for tomorrow. So Yechezkel describes here, like, they're like, it's kind of strange, right? I mean, what does this pasuk have to do with what we just talked about? These people are talking gruff, and they're not being honest in their business dealings, and they're not being beautiful. They're being ugly in the way they treat each other. Look, this is the people that has left its land. What? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, you could understand it as it's also disparaging the land. In other words, they are so that's how this way they come.
Okay, I don't think so. Because that wasn't the discussion. The discussion was Torah. And on the Torah level, right? It's a Torah that is the Seder HaOlam. Like the interconnectedness of all things. Okay. In any case, time appropriate to be reading this. It's like what it means to come back. What it means to be kicked out of here, and how you caused yourself to be kicked out of here. It's a very, very frightening implication. If you don't treat each other with derech eretz, so you're going to get kicked out of here. That's the subject, isn't it? About learning, and it's about mitzvahs, and it's about talking benachat with people and treating them with decency and honesty. Okay. In any case, that's the mirror image. But the prime image is that love is, as it started, right? V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, she'Hashem shamayim mitahev al yadcha, which comes from this environmental consciousness and awareness of the interconnectedness. Your behavior reflects that, and then everyone's feeling love for each other, and then they're feeling love for you and for the Torah that you represent, etc., etc. Yeah, sorry, what was I saying?
We say in Musaf and the Chagim, I think people often conflate those two statements, whereas they're really very different. Because I feel like we're at a stage right now that physically, Galina Me'atzeno has come to an end, at least if people choose to be it so. But Nidrachachnu Me'al Matenu is the process that we're trying to fix right now.
Yeah.
And I think that this midrash speaks directly to what that actually looks like.
Right. To become mitrachik me'admatcha, or to be mitkarev ladmatcha.
Well, yeah.
Right. I mean, so deeply, as we were talking out, about, a few weeks ago, so deeply, right? That is profoundly related to the question of the return of the sacrifices. Profoundly related to the return of the sacrifices, because as long as you are rachok me'admatcha, so then you have no real appreciation of where you've come from, because you're so dedicated to being abstracted and not of the earth and not of the flesh and not of the animal. So I mean, sacrifice has absolutely nothing to do with you. Like, how would you bring a sacrifice? What would that be? It would only be like a subjugation of the animal order, rather than what it's meant to be, which is an expression of, I have come from you. I have come from you. And in my stewardship of you, as I have been guided by evolution into what I have become out of you, I now guide you towards what is the next step for both of us, and this absolute dedication to the one. But if you've been mitrachik mi'ad matcha, so then it's irrelevant to have a sacrificial avoda, and which is why it seems so strange and foreign to us, because we're rachok mi'ad matenu. Because we're rachok mi'ad matenu. That's a beautiful diuk. It's a beautiful diuk. Yeah. Rachok mi'ad matenu. So that's really why we can't get back there. It's a question of our awareness of like who we are and our relation to our land. So the Maharal, I really don't know if we're going to make it by 11, because we haven't even got to the Kiddush Hashem piece. Okay. But now, so the Maharal takes this pasuk, and instead of describing it the way the Rambam did, as it's just the way it is, he wants to suggest that it's actually implied in the way the pasuk is written, that this is something that you're going to be sharing. What's this Elokecha thing? V'ahavta Hashem, you could have said. And even it would have been more appropriate, as he points out, because Shem Havaya is the Shem of Rachamim, of Zivugim, of Yichudim, right, of Pa'amayim Echad, Gematria Chavav, of the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, the male and the female, of all of the elements that have to do with love and compassion. And Elohim, in its plurality, has to do with differentiation, distinction, delineation, and din. So what's this Elohecha thing here? Right? So he suggests that Lefichach darshu sheyeshem shamayim mitahev al yadcha, klomar sheyiyu habriot omrim shehu yigbarach Elokecha. It's willing to, so to speak, use the wrong word, right, in order to profit the possessive form. And it's the right word for the possessive form, because din has to do with possession. Rachamim has to do with sharing. So Elokecha implies then that there's something that's exposed here. It's a very beautiful reading, right? There's something that's exposed here about this very special relationship that you have with God. It's exactly like we were talking about with the couple under the chuppah. The more there's an appreciation that they're having of each other and of the kinyan that has been made there of each other under the chuppah, so the more others experience a sharing of that. Because the individual, when it's not selfishly taken, as only your own and exclusively your own, the individual becomes something which is a very profound portal into the things that we all share. Because if you diffuse it, so then there's nothing there at all. What would there be for you to be sharing if those people under the chuppah aren't actually in that?
Talking about love.
It's very important to know this. I know this in performing, or in speaking, or like it's very important. Like in some of you are teachers or rabbis, and and like all kinds of like things out there. It's like very important to know this. Or when you're working with people, any of that kind of work, right? It's when you start getting into like sharing it, it's a big turnoff. When you are really in it, but in an open way, with a consciousness of like we are sharing this. Not I'm sharing this with you. We are sharing this. It's a very much more profound experience that everyone experiences, right?
More real it is for you in that moment.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's like totally like that. Yeah. It's like, it's because it's Elokecha. It's because it's this is my God. So does that mean he's not mine? If you're a Russia, you might hear that way, like the Russia at the Leila Seder. But if you're a regular guy, so it will become something which like there's a resonance that we're sharing. But it'll depend on what you mean when you say V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha.
It's an analog to what you were saying before about the love between two people.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I don't understand the one with
what the Maharal just did? Yeah, he did it. Okay, yeah, inside. So we'll read it inside, sure. Lefichach darshu, right? Okay, so we'll go back. V'nira dediek ze midichti v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. Dahave lemichta v'ahavtas Hashem. It should have said v'ahavtas Hashem. He's not telling you why it should have just said v'ahavtas Hashem. He's going to imply it in the next sentence. it's because of the things that I said, that Shem Havaya has to do with the compassion and love. Aval Shem Elokecha shayach etzel hayira, ki Elohim hu midat hadin, kamo shekatuv et Hashem Elokecha tira, lo lemidas ha'ava. So why is it saying Elokecha? Lefichach darshu. So this is what's going on. Sheyeh Shem Shamayim mitahev al yadcha. So they understood from this that the Elokecha actually is a injunction that it become that the way of your loving God be a way of loving Him that arouses and inspires others to love Him too. What? How did that come from Elokecha? You're asking, right, Itamar? Like, how did that? Huh? Klomar, sheyu habriot omrim shehu yitbarach Elokecha. What happens is the people will see you and you become the portal. People will see you and they will say that, man, this guy, Hashem is his God. So now you've given them a point of contact with the divine.
And with the Elohim side of the divine.
Well, the Elohim side is what makes it individualizable.
Yes, how you can have that.
It makes it
You
possessible.
never have Yud Hey Vav Hey. Yes.
With a possessive form, right? You can only have Elokecha with a possessive form because din is the necessary component for kinyan. So, and for individuation. So you've given what have you given them? What have you given them? You've given them access to God's expression by becoming a mode through which God becomes expressed. And there's a contact point. Love needs a contact point. Is that what you said?
I said it's a real contact high.
Oh, contact high. Okay, fine. I took it a different place. It's a contact point. Because love always needs a contact point. Okay, so what you've done is you've given them a portal into seeing what love of God looks like. Excuse the term, but what an Ish Elokim looks like, what a man of God looks like. And then they become, it becomes visible to them to see the name of God.
And desirable.
And desirable, because the way you are living is an interpenetrating life. Right, the Naya, again, it's not just because you're a nice guy, it's because you're living a sharing. You're living sharing. Beautiful. That the possession actually makes him beautified and gives him a dwelling place, which Chazal so beautifully play on that word, which can mean both, anvehu, the na'eh and naveh. Okay, so v'shem Hashem nikra alecha ki t'pa'er v'yitahev al yadcha. Okay, so the Maharal actually learns it from. I mean, it's a beautiful diuk in the pasuk, whereas the Rambam. I mean, it's so nice because the Rambam was actually teaching you that the way to love is by observing the way things are. So how about if we observe the way things are when it comes to love itself? It's like, and then you learn about the way you are to love. It's almost like within the mitzvah of Ava, he actually does the mitzvah of Ava, which involves observing and contemplating the way things are, and that's how you'll actually learn about how to do this mitzvah. But when the Maharal learns it from a diuk in the pasuk of the Elokecha, that he's seeing that this is something that you are forming an expression of through the way in which you are, and that expression is an expression that leads people to love because the behavior is loving behavior on the level of it expressing and reflecting the unity of the interconnectedness between things. It's like, it's very rich. It's hard to like say it in one sentence. It's like, yeah.
By way of the particular, in some level, right?
Absolutely.
Either through a couple, through an individual's relationship
Totally.
with God and avoda.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's that particular avoda that then allows for the.
Exactly, and that's exactly the diuk he makes. It's because it didn't just, if it had just said V'ahavta Hashem, So okay, so go for it.
Or it's a contact point for other people.
There's nothing, it has nothing to do with anyone else. But it's Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. So there's an observer who's seeing that this belongs to you. There's a contrast, there's boundaries between you and other implied in Elokecha. And then when he sees that, and this is very beautiful, it's not Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokechem or Elokeinu. No, that's the guy under the chuppah going like this. It's very subtle, very subtle to live this way. Very hard. I feel like it's just so easy to blow it, because so I'm supposed to share it. So now I'm going to become big in Kiruv, and I'm going to share it with everyone, and tell them about it. And I'm going to wait a minute, what are you doing? Or exactly, just be possessive about it. It's a very subtle balancing. It's a very personal relationship that I have. I would say, if we want to make a chiluk that could help us, it's a very individual relationship I have. It's not it's not personal in the sense of possessive, like only mine, but it is individual. It's very unique. Maybe that will help us to make.
I feel like it's crucial in the balance.
Yeah. Tzniut. Do you want to describe?
Just a place where my own sense of the preciousness is something to be guarded.
Right.
And not wanted.
Right.
Therefore the sharing can be pure. When that's present, I feel like under the chuppah, and I'm also this is like a whole different direction, but it's going to get very strong for me. The implications of what we're learning for aesthetics, bifal. I think of the difference between subjective and objective, and an aesthetic sense at all. Bifal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Again, and coming up for me about this is the creative process. Elohim is the name Hashem that hews out the world in a way that this world, the name Elohim is what specifically
defines this particular one.
This particular world.
Right. Yes.
And that just in the creative process, it requires, as you're saying, necessitates details. The more one paints a story with exquisite details, and the way that the country road had small rocks across it, and I felt them underneath my feet. That's a much more powerful statement, an expression than I walk down the dirt path.
Right.
And it could be, maybe this is connected to Rav Kook. He talks about how every line that is not drawn has to be drawn as an obligation to create. And maybe that has to do with what you're talking about the
every line has to be drawn.
It's because it's individual, as you're saying. So I have my God and you have your God, but your relationship of love is something totally different and individualized to you. And so is mine. We have to come together to paint those broader pictures in order to illustrate that broader picture of what love in its broadest sense can be through the individual.
Mm-hmm. And through the richness of the picture by virtue of its details. Okay. So this is his chidush in the pasuk as implying. I mean, it's just such a rich teaching here. You can miss it. It's like in 2 lines. It's such a rich teaching of dafka. This because it's a paradoxical teaching that ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha teaches you that this is to be shared. It's like love the Lord, your God, teaches you that it's to be shared. It didn't sound that way to me. It's just so. Okay. But because the context is love, and dafka because the context is love, that's what's going to happen. Upershu hakatuv al tamid chacham, etc., etc. I think I'm going to now skip to the, although this is very important in terms of the Gedarim here, he says that it's particularly talking about Talmidei Chachamim, who themselves are a hefts of Torah and connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're going to, even though it's very important in the Gedarim, but nevertheless, we want to see the contrast. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to make contrast to Kiddush Hashem in a of course, a most surprising way. Do you need to like stretch, take a drink? I wouldn't mind. Also,
Tea or
just
water?
actually, yeah, tea.
I'm still hung up on this pleasure thing.
Yep.
You lost that one up there, man.
In the sense that it sounds as if you're talking about something very sensual.
Oh yeah.
But it's not just like an ethereal oneg of like, wow, connecting to God feels good. It's that its connection to the world feels good. Connection to nature, connection to people, relationship to creation. Like you're talking about relationship to creation. You know, as that point of getting out of the self and into the other, that is the root of love. You know, or that the pleasure that comes from.
Actually, I'm on a break right now.
Yeah. All right.
That's a question for Daniel.
What happened? Did I do something wrong?
No.
What?
Your bottle is glowing.
Huh? So I mean, we must, because I mean, I can shorten it if I need to. I mean, I don't know what the. I mean, I think this would be the way to step into the Tzfirah. I mean, because it's just is the way. I mean, I think.
If that's okay for you.
Absolutely. I was just asking.
The question is people who leave at the end of the year if they have limitations. But
So what's that?
So the ones that
Can we go?
So just make sure if we see Eliezer.
I'll send them.
Send those guys and Don Septimus and
And
who's the other one?
Stopped, Jonathan asked me to pass on that he is teaching in the Beit Midrash, the Shemitah Beit Midrash that Shaul Yulman organized today. He
Right.
apologized that he cannot make it, but he felt like.
So is this like the break because we're going to go straight into group from this?
No. We're about to begin the reason we're learning this morning.
Okay. I need a break.
We just had it.
Class group.
Between class and group there'll be a break.
At least 2 minutes.
The shoresh, that's not a break. ודבר זה שורש של אהבת שמו וקבלת אלוקותו. Did you hear what he just said?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'd rather hear what you have to say.
ודבר זה, don't say that. שורש אל אהבת שמו וקבלת אלוקותו היא קדושת שמו. So now, all of this I've been telling you. What is all of this I've been teaching you. The davar zeh. I'm sorry, we need to read the last line of the previous paragraph. I'm sorry. Ulefichach. All right, what can we do? We can't avoid it. Upershu hakatuv. I've gone back about 10 lines. Upershu hakatuv. But we're going to read it quickly just to get to, I don't want to get into the Talmid Chacham, non-Talmid Chacham issue. Al Talmid Chacham mipnei she'Talmid Chacham hem rishonim el Hashem yitbarach. That we'll wait for until we do Netiv HaTorah to see how that works. Asher elukuto aleihem barishona. Because they are the highest consciousness of creation, so therefore they are the first in the sense of importance and nearness to the ultimate expression of creation is the Talmidei Chachamim. Asher elukuto aleihem barishona V'chein nikra Elokei Yisrael, sheyeshmo yitbarach mitahev al yedei Yisrael, and it's our task as Yisrael that we make God's name beloved to all peoples. Kasher Yisrael noagim b'hanaga yeshara v'ru'uya Yisrael, when we live in a way that is reflective of that Yosher, which is the word Yisrael. V'al ze ne'emar Yisrael asher b'chayit pa'er, we create a tiferet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. K'davar ze amevi el ha'ahava, and this brings to love. Kasher Talmid Chacham asher Torat Hashem nikra alav v'hanhaga ha'yeshara v'haruya, az gam acherim nimshachim acharav u'mekablim elokuto yivarach. And others, they follow him and they are joined to God through him. Lefichach amar katuv ve'ahavta et Hashem elokecha sheyeh Hashem shamayim mitahev al yadcha ad sheyiyu hakol nimshachim achar Hashem. In a sense, this is where he ends the discussion of Ahavas Hashem, which, if you remember, began with love as being hakol nimshachim el Hashem, that everything's being drawn towards this ultimate presence and being. Okay. V'davar zeh, this reality. And note here, you can see similarities and difference between him and the Rambam here also, right? That davar zeh shoresh el havat shmo v'kabbalat elokuto. What's the davar zeh? That hakol nimshachim. That like the reality is that all of the phenomena of existence and of the creatures are rooted in the divine reality, such that they are always always flowing back towards source. That, if you remember, was his reading in Korbanos. That was his reading in Rabbi Akiva. That was his reading in love in general. It's a flowing back towards a unified source.
Certainly a fundamental principle of ecology as well.
You need to say a few more words on that?
It needs to move toward simplicity.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a tendency towards simplification.
Broadest scale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Come from and return to simplicity. Beautiful. I'd like to read more about that when I'm looking at it. Yeah, that's so beautiful. So beautiful a parallel to spiritual reality. So that is the shorish to Ahavat Hashem and Kabbalat Elokuto, is knowing this about the truth of what is, that it's not a imposed system, the Kabbalat Elokuto. It's a reflection of the nature of what is. And then it can be done with love. And then it is love. Okay. He Kedushat Shmo. The Kabbalat Elokuto is Kedushat Shmo. Now let's see how he gives a reading here. A certain reading. Kedita beperek Rishon de Sota. Okay, now this is like perfect for where we are sitting right now on this day. Watch this. Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida. Yosef, shekidesh shem shamayim baseter, zacha v'hosifu lo ot achat mishmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yosef was mekadesh shem shamayim baseter, alone in the room with Eshet Potifera. And he got one letter from God's name, because in Tehillim, Edut b'Yehosef. Edut b'Yehosef, his witnessing is something which then entitles him to the addition of a divine letter into his name, because of the Kiddush Hashem. So the name now has become part of him. Okay, this is very important now, the chiluk that he's making, as you'll see as it opens up. Yehuda, shekidesh shem shamayim befarhesia, zacha v'nikra kulo al shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Yehuda, who did it in public, so his name has Yud and He and Vav and the He. he was Mekadesh Shem Shamayim in public. Now, you might think that means when he was Modeh, that with Tamar, he's actually going to the Medrash here, which is a Gemara. So this is not some like side Medrash. This is a Gemara. So this is definitive, right? So we'll see where it goes. Right? Yosef, Mahu, Tichtiv Vayhi Kahayom Hazeh. Yosef, about Yosef it says, it was this day, Vayavo Habayita Lasot Melachto. He came home to do his work. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shneim L'davar Avera Nitkavnu. Yosef and Eshet Potifera, they both have the same thing in mind. Yeah. Tana Melamed, this is like, Tana Melamed She'alu Lamita Shneim. They both got into bed. Arumim. They both stripped down naked. Ba'ota sha'a ba'ata diyukno shel aviv v'niret lo b'chalon.
It's always the worst thing to happen. He saw his father, Yaakov's face, the image of his father is like
Looking back at him.
Looking
through the window.
Looking in through the window. Looking in through the window. Which is interesting. He's not in the room with them. At least that, okay. But he's looking in through the window. So, but I mean, first of all, this doesn't sound like Yosef HaTzadik, who, Vayanas HaChutza, like,
Right. The Torah said when he ran out.
It's very strange what Chazal do with this. I mean, he's in bed with her. He's taken off all his clothes. I guess he gets dressed again, leaving, and then she grabs his clothes. But all these details filled in here, right, that are not very savory and not very complimentary. I mean, like the tzaddik who overcame his yetzer. I mean, wait a minute, it gets worse, right? Niret lo b'chalon amar lo Yosef. Atidim achecha yikatvu al avnei ephod. All your brothers, they're going to be written on the stones of the ephod, of the Kohn Gadol. Ve'ata b'neihem, ritzoncha sheyimache shimcha mib'neihem. You want to lose that? V'tikari roez zonot. You're going to become a pimp. Shenemar v'roez zonot ya'abed home? I'm going to lose all of that wealth? Miyad. Vateshev be'etan kashto. You're always here somehow, Eitan. Vateshev be'etan kashto. That in that moment, he restrained the force of his keshet, the keshet being a description of the Aver. Yehuda, that was the moment of Kiddush Shem Shamayim Baseter. I mean, it's pretty Baseter. He didn't even mean for it to happen. So this is not just Baseter that nobody's there seeing it. On a certain level, he himself doesn't see it.
Well, except insofar as Batesha Kashta, meaning he reached the absolute moment and then made a decision and he had the cough.
Okay, so on a certain level, there's an even greater.
The power.
Okay, fine, thank you. There's an even greater power that needs to be exerted here when, I mean, he meant for it to happen. He wanted her, and they were in bed together, and they're right before the moment of, and he makes his choice. So it's a very sharp choice, right? That's true. And in that sense, the whole lead up sharpens that choice. But nevertheless,
It raises several questions.
right? It's like how did he get there? And okay. So let's put that aside right now, and let's see the contrast, and then see where he goes with it. What do you want to say?
Just in English, I'm just curious. Like, did you say that last?
Vateshev be'etan kashto. The simplest perush of that, or the simplest translation of that, is that he caused to rest or to settle with power. He exerted power to settle his keshet. Keshet meaning his arrow, bow and arrow. It was like he was about to shoot. He was about to shoot. Another reading is Vateshev be'etan kashto. He sat out the power of his arrow. You know, depending on how you vocalize, how you parse the sentence, right? Okay, but the point is the same. The point and really you see that Chazal are actually being deeply precise in the pasuk, because the pasuk implies that it was at its height. It was at its greatest power. Fullest tension. So, right, is that what we said? Fullest tension. So the only way you're going to get to the fullest tension is if you don't want the woman, if you think she's a disgusting pig, she's like, this is like gross, man. Like she's there with like all the thick lipstick and like, you know, the mascara is like, man, it's disgusting, right? So that's not much of a nisayon. It's only a nisayon if you really want her and you're in bed with her and it's like so it's been brought to its hilt. But the, so to speak, disappointing side of it is that it took Yaakov Avinu to appear to stop it. Okay.
Is it clear that
So,
Yaakov's
okay, so no. Oh yeah, so fine, we can exactly. So of course we can say all kinds of things here, and I think that they will be true, right? But let's just leave it now as a query and see the contrast, and then I want to talk about this more deeply, right? In Yehuda, the contrast is in Yehuda. Yehuda Maihi, Ditanya. So now there's a machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, of course, right? And the machlokas is about who jumped into the ocean, according to Rabbi Meir. It was Binyamin, which we're going to skip right now, and because we're running out of time also. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it was of course Yehuda, and we're going to pass down. This is like it's very, very rich here, obviously, but skip down a few lines till we get to Amarle Rabbi Yehuda. It's in Rashi Tevos, Aleph Lamed Reish Yud, about 5 lines up from the bottom. Amarle Rabbi Yehuda, Lo kacha yahamai. So that's not the way it was, that Binyamin jumped in and then Yehuda started throwing rocks at him. Ela ze omer ein ani yorei tchila. Everyone was saying like, I'm not me, as opposed to the Rabbi Meir had everyone wanting to go in and who's going to go first. V'ze omer ein ani yorei tchila. Kafatz Nachshon ben Aminadav, who's the Nasi of Shevet Yehuda. V'yarad layam tchila shenemar sabavuni b'kachash Ephraim uvemirma Beit Yisrael v'Yehuda od reidam el v'am kedoshim v'im kedoshim ne'eman ve'alav mefurash b'kabbalah hoshieni elokim ki ba'u ma'im at nafesh. Okay, so without going into the details, Yehuda jumped in. That was the Kiddush Shem Shamayim B'far Hesya, not his being moded for having impregnated Tamar, but rather this willingness to give it all up. To give it all up on this level of giving up Kibau Ma'im Ad Nafesh. Nobody wanted to, and he was ready to. So this is Kiddush Shem Shamayim. Sorry? That's right. So, okay. Let's read just a bit into this, and then we'll talk it out, and we'll bring this into the a moment of hityachadut with Kadoshei Elyon. Balavayra Ma'ala Azot, Shehi Kiddush Shemo. It's coming to tell you about Kiddush Hashem, as opposed to the Avas Hashem. Kiddush Hashem is not like with Ava, that it's other people coming to love him by virtue of your love. No one's being inspired here at all. Kiddush Hashem is something else that happens. Lo kmo hamida harishona shamanu ki shmo yitbarach nikra alav. With Ava, what happens is you are a being upon which the name of God is called. In other words, people see it exuding from you, being worn by you, right? It's your midah. It's your way of living. It's your way of living. It's a way of coming into possession of the divine in a way in which there is an ownership of that divinity by virtue of your behaviors. And then God becomes beloved through you. This is something else. It's not that the name is called as possessed by you. It is you. It is you. Kasher davek bishmo legamre. He's so davek in God's expression. V'ra'ui lahosif al shmo ot min shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? That means not that you are now sort of identified by expressing the divine and the unity and the loving interconnectedness of all things. You actually enter into the divine reality in a way in which you've completely given up the individual and independent gain to the point of a sacrifice of your small ego. It's in that sense, it's the opposite of the Elokecha element of Ahava. It's not Elokecha. What happens is you actually become, so to speak, to put it in a right now in a coarse way, you become the medium. You become the chefza itself of Shem Hashem in that choice, in that living. There's when the Maharal talks of the devek, he's talking about a full binding together. So Kiddush Hashem is it's no longer Elokecha. And I believe in that sense what happened with Rabbi Akiva was all his life he was waiting when it would come to his opportunity to be V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha afilu no teles nafshecha. But in the moment of the complete and utter loss of his own personal boundaries, then what needed to be expressed and what was the echad of himself with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and his Ava became Kiddush Hashem. His Ava became Kiddush Hashem. Now the amazing thing that happens here, right, is that there's actually these two different bechinos, right? There's a bechina of Yosef and a bechina of Yehuda. The bechina of Yosef is Kiddush Shem Shamayim Baseter, and the bechina of Yehuda is the Kiddush Shem Shamayim B'far Hesya. And here, look how the Maharal explains this. There's a difference of category between V'ahavtas Hashem and Kiddush Hashem, and there's a difference of darga, of level, between Kiddush Shem Hashem in Seiter and Kiddush Shem Shamayim Barabi. How does this work? Yesh hefresh ben Kiddush Hashem Barabi u'ben Kiddush Hashem Baseiter. Ki ikar Hashem shebo noda u'mefursam l'kol al yedei shmo yitbarach. First, just get a definition here. The ikar of what a name is awareness. It's his coming to be known. That's what a name is. It's his coming to be known. Making a name. And by the way, this is something which is it's a very dear beer that I have, like that we're used to saying, like in the Kabbalah. So the Malchut is the shame. The Malchut is the shame. It says Gilu. So we're used to, like, we're used to the Malchut being the shame as that it's in his being known that he's able to be Melech. Like we say, Ein Melech below Am. If there is no recipient of his kingship who is accepting his kingship, so then there is no kingship. It requires awareness in order for there to be a Malchut. And it requires, therefore, a free awareness in order for there to be a Malchut. It can't be that you are accepting God as the guide of existence because he's pushed a button that makes you accept it. It's got to be that you're completely free in order to do that. So the only way you can be completely free in order to do that is for you to have awareness, because consciousness and awareness are the root of your freedom. And the broader your awareness, the more free you become, because the more you see the possibilities and the more you're aware of the different ways in which things can become organized and patterned. So the broader your awareness, the more free you become. The more you become aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more there is Malchut. The more there is his shame. It's created by your awareness. It's not like he's there with his Malchus and now he just needs you to become aware of him. It's not there at all until you become aware of him. And the only way that it is meaningful in your becoming aware of him is by virtue of your free choice of that. Okay. So I say this because it's very important to recognize this, that the shame, the Kiddush HaShem, is all around the awareness which is created. Now here there's a very subtle thing that happens, and that is Yehuda is B'farhesia. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows exactly what's going on. But with Yosef, it's completely Beseter. Not only Beseter, as I said before, that no one's out there seeing it. He himself doesn't know it about himself. It's not like Nachshon ben Aminadav, that I'm going and doing it. He didn't go in there to do it at all. He only found out himself in the course of his own failing. His own failing then led him into a situation in which his truth could become absolutely exposed, first and foremost himself. That's why Yaakov Avinu appears in the window. Because in seeing his face, he's really discovering the inner reality, which is now becoming exposed to him. Now, in the reality, the historic reality we're living in, Yosef is Gematria Tzion. And the entire reality of Tzionut and return to Tzion, and the whole calling of this place Yisrael, which was the northern kingdom of the Shivtei Yosef, is a reflection of the Bechina of Yosef. Yehuda is the religious guy. Yehuda is the one about whom his Kiddush Shem Shamayim is all exposed. But Yosef is completely Beseter. And then you get these Chayalim going out, and they don't know what the heck they're doing. They don't know. I mean, they, on a certain level, they think they know what they're doing. But like what the Rambam describes about what a Jewish Chayal is really about, he's out there fighting for Yichud Hashem. He doesn't know that. It's completely Beseter. But to die in that context, you become a Yosef Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. It's a Kiddush Shem Shamayim Beseter, where you don't even know what you're doing. And it's happening to you by virtue of the circumstances in which history has put you. He didn't go down to Mitzrayim in order to be Lemichia Lehem. He just got there it is. It just happens to him. Yehuda then is sent in front. He'll take care of the Batei Medrash. He'll take care of all the teaching. He'll be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim Barabim. But the whole context that enables him is this Shevet, whose whole being is hidden even from their own selves. That kind of a Kiddush Shem Shamayim isn't even a revelation of the entirety of the name. It's a revelation of the Hey. And I believe the revelation of the Hey, which is revealed there, is actually a revelation of this Malchut level, which is a consciousness which is not an externalized consciousness. It's a consciousness which he himself discovers about himself by virtue of the situation that he's placed in. And every one of them, when it came to the dying moment, for sure, on some level, was shown and was given a vision, whether it be while he was still in body or out of body, what it was that he was doing that he himself didn't even realize. And that is this I'll take 10 minutes and we'll meet to share.